It's been so wonderful as film fans and to watch your journey as a storyteller, you know, original screenplays, telling these original stories. But this has been something that connected with you as a teenager. And I wanted to know what that felt like, making that decision that you were going to jump in, that you were going to adapt it, and you were going to tell it.
Well, I think firstly I was quite scared because I really, really love the book. And I think anyone who loves the book, you know, it is kind of, it's insane to think you could adapt it because it's just so good and it's so rich and it's so complicated. But so kind of early on, I sort of thought, well, I can't adapt the book as it is, but I can try and make an approximation of the way it made me feel when I was a teenager, and it made me feel. Well, it made me feel. It made me cry, and it made me scared, and it made me troubled, and it made me aroused, and I felt that particularly after Saltburn, the thing that I loved so much was, you know, that thing that cinema can do that only going to the movies can do, which is make you physically react. And, you know, and I kept thinking that's what I really want to do next, and then it just kept going back to that first thing, which had that effect on me, which was this.
When did you know you were going to do it?
I'm very bad. Yeah, I mean, I've sort of yes and no, because I always feel so mad when I talk about it, but I live in imaginary worlds. So I have a few parallel universes that I live in, and I guess lots of people do this, right? Yeah, it's sort of, they're kind of daydreams, but they're more real than daydreams, and they last for years. And so Saltburn was one, and Promising Young Woman was one, and, you know, my book Monsters was one, and they all kind of live together. And Wuthering Heights has been one since I read it. And what's kind of odd is that some are quite old and some are quite new, but the ones that like coalesce and solidify, usually one just happens. And with this, that's kind of what happened. And I was taking a year off. And then I was on set making this film. You know, my husband kept saying, "How's your year off going?" When I was sort of sitting there with my head in my hands, kind of having a nervous breakdown mid-film. But it just sort of, it's a bit like squeezing a spot. It's ready, and you got to do it, and it comes out. And that's how it's always been, you know, for me. And it's the same kind of level of like queasy pleasure that I think they're equivalent.
We all have queasy pleasure, definitely.
Well, not all of us. I found not all of us.
What were the things though about, because one of the things that I loved that you saying was that idea that, you know, this book obviously a kind of a huge thing to try and adapt, but the thing that you wanted to be really, I guess, faithful to was the words that she wrote.
Yeah.
And so how did you kind of find that kind of halfway of your version with her words and kind of working out what that would be?
Well, I think her words are the sort of, you know, if there are kind of points in a journey, there are, you know, there's just no better dialogue than Bronte's dialogue. You know, you've just got these extraordinary words. And so really, I always knew that on that journey I knew that what would happen, I suppose. And then it was really about, because the book happens over generations and it's got multiple framing narratives and it's conflicting, and, you know, I kind of also had to be like, okay, well, how do I make it sort of linear?
Yeah.
You know, consolidate some characters, make Joseph, who is an elderly, sort of very angry, sort of slightly incomprehensible kind of Bible basher in the book, is now played as a hunky stable boy by Ewan Mitchell. You know, so I made some kind of, you know, really kind of important creative decisions like that.
Yeah.
You know, but I think it was just about, it's easy because they're the things you remember from the book. You remember whatever our souls are made of, his and mine are the same. You remember, I have not broken your heart, you have broken it, and breaking it, you've broken mine. You remember, please do not leave me in this abyss where I cannot find you. You know, you remember, just there's so much. And so those are but that's, you know, it's a very straightforward journey, that. And so for me, and even the kind of more subversive, there are subversive moments in this movie, as indeed there are in the book. And a lot of them that are quite shocking, I still think, a lot of it is verbatim Brontë. you know, the things that I think some people think like it's too far.
Yeah.
I mean,
her words.
Yeah. Blame Emily.
Yeah, but it's incredible to think those words were written, 1847 or something? Yeah. If you think about where women were at that time, yeah, and the fact that she wrote these words at that time, it's extraordinary.
Well, also the thing about her is that she's just a visionary. She's a visionary. Mm-hmm. And so, like all visionaries, she lives out of time. So I think the thing is, when you look at people like John Milton or Shakespeare or William Blake, they have this thing where they would be the same now, I suppose.
Yeah.
And that's partly, I think, why Wuthering Heights is so engaging still, is that it's not of its time. That's why making it a sort of straightforward period drama didn't really make that much sense to me.
Yeah.
Because it sort of lives in its own world. Mm-hmm. And the Brontes kind of lived in their own world too. They lived in their own imaginary universe. And, you know, Charlotte talked about Emily as being a baby god. And I think it's just the perfect description of her, because I don't think she meant like a small god. I think she meant a human god, mm-hmm, something that was both human and godlike. And that's what her work is. And she wrote this one novel, and some amazingly beautiful poems. But, you know, like, she's just, there's basically, as you could tell, I could just talk about Emily Brontë maybe for the rest of my life and never be bored. Other people would be.
When you were starting to think about writing it and that this was going to be the next project, was Lucky Chap and Margot always the home that it was going to, and the family it was going to live with?
Yeah, I mean, I just love working with them, and they've just been so amazing. And Josie, who, you know, is the kind of on-set producer and has been since Promising a Woman, like, I can't really imagine doing anything without him because he's so brilliant. And Margot's a genius too. And I was really lucky that Margot, I sent it to them to produce, and Margot luckily kind of asked if she might play Kathy, because I was very nervous to ask her, because I think we have a different relationship, and I didn't want to put her on the spot. And I was saying to someone earlier, it's a bit like being the person who like pretends to have a stretch in the cinema and put your arm around someone. Yes. I was like, do I go for it? And I didn't. Of course I didn't, because she's braver than me, she asked. And yeah, she's just unbelievable.
Did you write it with her in mind though? Or did you write it for you?
I wrote it as I write kind of emotionally. Mm-hmm. And then as I go on, you know, you sort of, people sort of come, you know, there are like people like Shazad I'd seen in What's Love Got to Do with It, which he was in a few years ago, and I was like, oh, that's a romantic lead. Mm. And I knew Edgar needed to be a romantic lead. And so, you know, and I'd worked with Alison on Saltburn, and I just knew that she could give Isabella the kind of agency and the kind of like troubling inner conflict that part needed. She's... Yeah,
honestly,
unbelievable.
If you thought she was good in Saltburn, wait until you see her as Isabella, and she's amazing.
There's just no limits to what
she surprises you with every breath.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's the thing about her as well, is her breath is. You know somebody's in it when they're breathing differently, and she breathes differently. She's just like, she's possessed. She's just incredible. And Hong, you know, there's kind of not really a better actor working today. So it's sort of like you have these people. I have a kind of list in my mind of people that I'm obsessed with, I guess. Mm-hmm. You know, even like somebody might have a couple of lines in something in a TV series I'm watching. I'm like, that person is really amazing. You know, you kind of can tell sometimes. They have a thing that you want. So, but to get them both, to get everyone that I'd asked for was really, and Clunes, sorry, Martin Clunes, Martin Clunes, who is like, unbelievably brilliant.
To get to this point in his career,
I love him
and
so
be
much.
given this opportunity, and you're like, bloody hell.
I did not give him an opportunity. I begged him. Martin Clunes is like, I just think I've always felt that he was like a genius. From Gary Strang and Men Behaving Badly to Doc Martin, like, you know, but everything he does is so right, it's so good. And he's just heaven. He's heaven. often.
Yeah.
And he's so good in the film. Like, he gave people shivers.
Yeah.
He's so good.
Did you know when you were in Saltburn that Jacob was going to be your Heathcliff?
Coffee.
He's so great. Oh
so
my
good.
God.
I know. It's
His
bad luck.
accent's brilliant.
It's bad luck when you have to shout Kathy
Is
so many
it?
times, isn't it?
No.
He's
He does
so
it so
good.
well.
I think
I've been dreaming about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that will happen. I think the thing is with him, as I saw him, he came out of hair and makeup in his Felix 2005 sideburns and the like tousled hair, and he looked exactly like the Heathcliff on my sort of like 90s paperback, and I was like, oh wow, that was kind of what the kind of, I can see the billowing shirt. I mean, in fact, I think he was wearing a billowing shirt. I guess I only make the same film.
Wear this.
But again, it never kind of quite once. It's when I hand something in, when I'm finished writing it, then I can think about that next stage.
Yeah.
And so I have little like daydreams of people, but it's more like they're very distinct stages to me. Everything.
And once you'd written it, did you? I mean, whilst you're writing it, you're visualising it. You've probably already made the decision on what it's going to look like, what you want it to feel like. And I was lucky enough to come on set for like one day, and I felt like I was stepping back in time in terms of like what I imagined it being like to step onto like old school Hollywood sets in a way. Do you know what I mean? You're like your jaws on the ground the whole time for the detail and all this kind of, from one side it's the moors, and then you're over there, you know, even though you did film on the real moors. What was the decision behind that in terms of how you wanted to shoot it and what you wanted it to look like?
Well, I think the thing is that, again, because it's sort of gothic and because it's such an emotional, it's much more of an emotional novel maybe in many ways than a literal one. I think everything needed to be an extension of the idea of pathetic fallacy. So it's not just raining and thunder when people are sad and sunny when they're happy, although it is that, of course. It's that Wuthering Heights needs to kind of provoke a sort of primal response. So the place, I mean. So what we kind of did, and Susie Davis, who I work with on Saltburn, who's the most amazing production designer in the world, and I'm really lucky that I think we enjoy the same things. You know, the idea was that nature is kind of thrusting itself into Wuthering Heights, so it's got these sort of, it's built into these kind of huge slate rocks that are kind of coming into the house and sort of slicing it, and then as things kind of degrade over time, we had these sort of growths and this amazing artist called Nicola Turner. She's a sculptor, and she made us these beautiful sort of almost like tendril kind of tumors made of horsehair. So everything feels like nature's sort of slowly sort of like reclaiming the place, and it's spooky and sort of, you know, a little brutalist, and it's very to do with shape, and then you go to Thrushcross Grange, and Thrushcross Grange is the opposite. It's like nature pressed under glass, so it's a living garden, so the garden was alive, but it's sort of everything perfect in its place, and it's crystal stuck behind walls, and it's Kathy's skin, literally kind of like facsimile of her skin in her bedroom, kind of plus veins and freckles and, you know, taxidermy. It's all the Victorian things, because the Victorians had such a fetish for like taking nature and stuffing it or pressing it or, you know, throttling it basically. It's corsets and dog collars and bridles and all of the things that are motifs in the film, which, you know, of course may seem a little like cheeky, I suppose, but it's what the Victorians were obsessed with, and so it felt like those kind of, these are emotional choices you make, and then you kind of build them.
Yeah. Why is that detail so important to you? You know, that idea that in Kathy's bedroom, the wallpaper is her skin. It's like almost like a breathing membrane in a way. The veins and the moles and the you know, it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Why is that detail important to you?
Well, I mean, and also it is Margot's skin, and we asked her to send us all her veins and all her freckles, and then we printed it on silk and stuffed it and put latex over it so that it could sweat, and, you know, we had hairs coming out of moles, which sadly don't make it into the final film. They were deemed too grotesque for some, you know, and the trimmings are made of blonde hair, but at first glance you don't see any of it. It's just a beautiful pink room with old-fashioned Victorian trim, and that's, I mean, you know, apart from anything else, it's like a visual example of like what it feels like to be made a wife, to be made an object of beauty, to be collector's item. But also, you know, it's the stuff that I live for. It's the stuff that I care deeply about, and Linus, the cinematographer, and Susie and Jacqueline, all of us, and the actors, you know, you've got to build something anyway. You've got to make something anyway. So every detail needs to, you know, it needs to earn its place. Every prop needs to say something about the person carrying it. Like, I don't know how to do it any other way. And it is exhausting. It is, I think, a quite exhausting process. But it's also wonderful.
With Jacqueline and the costumes as well, I mean, it's just the dream, all of it. Not just like Kathy's clothes, everyone's clothes, all of it. I mean, I have no idea how many costumes were made for it, but there's an interest in, you know, Kathy's only ever in white, red and black. So, you know, and that, all these kind of decisions they feed into story, they feed into emotion, they feed into the character to where she is and how she's feeling and reacting to things as well.
Yeah, and it's also how everything works. I think the kind of interesting thing as well that I've maybe like learned now with my third film is that you take anything out of context and it doesn't make sense. So everything only exists really as a world. And so the thing about, you know, the costumes, for example, is they're chosen to be sort of those colours and the shapes that Kathy's in, because it means that she sort of always stands slightly apart from the rooms that she's in. Whereas Isabella, who's played by Alison, who's kind of, you know, sort of softer in some ways character, is always sort of slightly disappearing into the background. You know, there are all of these, like the thousands of conversations that we have about why, you know, and the idea is that Edgar has made his fortune in textiles, because that was a very sort of common thing at the time in that place, was suddenly this enormous, like unfathomable wealth from this new kind of industry and factories that were popping up. And so we wanted to make sure that the fabrics there felt slightly out of time, because the idea was that he was offering something kind of almost like futuristic compared with sort of sackcloth and leather that they'd been wearing before. So it's just all of those. And then Linus, we shoot all of them and test all of them to make sure they light in a certain way, and in moonlight and daylight and candlelight. You know, it's just everyone working together.
There's an amazing kind of aesthetic to it as well, and particularly when we see Margot, like the colour of her skin, and it tells us, it's part of like the how she's feeling. It's so beautiful, and you kind of, all of these decisions really just draw you in to the story and the emotion of the characters. Talk to me a little bit about that kind of side of it.
Well, I mean, Sean, who's the hair and makeup artist, is a genius, and I think what we felt always was that Kathy should be quite sort of windblown and ruddy and freckly, which would have been really kind of an anathema then as a sort of young lady. And then she sort of has kind of more makeup and more sort of slightly corseted, caged hairstyles as she kind of goes on. And it was just all about that thing of, again, you know, the kind of centre of the novel and the centre of the film is like what happens when you try and trap something, something natural. What happens when you make that decision? And so of course the makeup kind of ends up being part of that. You know, but she's just, but working with all, and also so many of them are on Saltburn as well, so like we all have a kind of shorthand.
Yeah. I wanted to ask if it's that kind of, you know, that idea that it's crazy that this is just your third film, because it's so, it's epic, it's incredible, but how much of that journey of your two previous films helped you to this point in terms of knowing how to make decisions, knowing, you know, to finding your right heads of departments, all that kind of thing, all the lessons that you learned from those first two films? What were some of the most important things that you brought with you to Wuthering Heights, do you think?
I think really how to collaborate, how to be firm, but also generous. So I think it's also like the kind of yes-anding, it's the kind of like classic improv. I did one improv class 10 years ago. Never forget it. You know, it's just sort of yes-anding everyone. And I think the thing that I've really learned that is really important to me is making everyone feel safe enough to do something bad. So I'm really only interested in something if it's just on the edge of, and sometimes over the edge of tasteless or silly or overblown. But when you're working with people, not just cast, but crew who are the best in the world, you know, the stakes are as high for them. And, you know, and so you're asking people to do something quite exposing, which is like, give me the interesting version of this, give me the bad version, do some bad acting. Let's see where it gets us. Give me a room that's just like the most hideous, insane thing you've ever seen. Let's start there. Because then you start to get to this kind of really interesting and exciting place. And that's what I think has been the most exciting thing for me, is kind of learning how to do that in a way that isn't, that is sort of effective, I guess.
Yeah. And was part of that as well, in terms of, you know, you as an actor and having that experience and knowing how, as a director, what relationship you wanted to have with your actors and relationship you didn't want to have with your actors as well?
I think it could be. I mean, I think the thing that I learned most as an actor was I worked on Call the Midwife for 5 years, and it was just the best time of my life. And everyone who works on it is so incredible, and it's run by women, and it's mostly starring women. And the best thing about working on that show, apart from the friendship and everything, was that I just saw how the sausage was made. Like, it's as simple as that. I was there every day and with the same cast and the same crew, but a different director and a different DP every 2 episodes. And there is nothing more useful than be able to see what works, what doesn't, what saves time, what loses time. You know, but it also, it gave me the confidence to know that in an emergency you can shoot 10 pages of dialogue, you know, like that in half a day, if your cast and your crew trust each other and love each other and help each other. And I think that was the thing that I really took away from my kind of time acting, is that everyone has to work together. And that you can't make something good, and you can't make something, you know, reasonably quickly if everyone's protecting their own little thing. And so, I think that was the best time of my life.
And with that kind of working with Margot, you know, as a producer and also as your lead actress, was she 2 people, you know, in terms of she's got 2 jobs to do, really? So did she differentiate between those? And was that helpful for you?
Yeah, she's 2 people. She must be more than 2 people, actually, I think. I really don't know. I don't know how she does it.
Who's the real Margot Robbie?
I mean, there could be 30 of them, each more perfect than the last, and I would not be at all surprised.
But that producer side, or the commitment to that she has, is inspiring, really.
The thing is that she is, and I don't want to say it comes easily to her, because that makes it seem like she isn't the most hardworking person in the world, which she is. The thing is she knows she's in the moment that she needs to be. So when she's acting, she is completely in it. And when she's producing, she's completely in it. And she's talented enough and experienced enough that those things don't impinge on each other. She is the least, she has for such a kind of gargantuan star and such a talented person, she has absolutely no ego. So I never once felt that she was kind of going to put the brakes on something because she wanted more coverage or she wanted to look a certain way. Never, ever, not once. You know, she completely gives herself over. And it's sort of just what she's like, and I think it's what interests her. I think she likes doing things that are difficult. She's remarkable. But it was very strange, because I did feel like there were 2 different people a lot of the time, especially in the edit, because in the edit I'd be watching Kathy the whole time, and then I'd speak to Margot, and I couldn't quite connect the 2.
What is that relationship then once, you know, has she kind of almost put Kathy to bed once the shooting finished, and completely looking at it with a producer head in terms of what is the best for the film, what is the best for this?
Definitely. And that's what she's, and she's so, you know, she's such a good producer. She's such a good producer as well. And so her notes are always bang on, and she's always like, you know, she's also kind of, she's a girl's girl as well, you know. she looks after you. She looks after everyone. She's always doing things behind the scenes for people. Like she's just a really exceptional person. And I do think the thing is about this film is I just think her performance, more than anything, is just so exquisite, and she's so she's really just remarkable.
We've got a little clip.
Oh, what do we have?
Wow, hear that in the woo! I didn't pick this clip.
Oh my God, that's me.
That's you.
Yeah, look. Looking through a camera, as I did every day.
What were you looking at? What were you? What did you think?
What I was doing there was pretending to look through the lens at a tree. No, I was looking at a tree. It was when Kathy was taken out of the tree.
Oh, wow.
Oh, sorry, you guys haven't seen it. That's so annoying. Well, it's a brilliant scene where Kathy is removed from a tree.
We're about to watch a very short clip right now, and then I love you. What is it? Well, it's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah.
What is it going to be?
Yeah.
And then we'll talk more about this after we've watched it. Oh, it's all you're getting. It is all you're getting, and it's all you need right now.
Yeah.
It's there's loads of things I want to talk about. That I want to mention the music first of all.
Yes,
that's,
Charlie.
Charlie is, and Anthony as well.
It's a combination of Charlie and Anthony, yeah. And so Anthony Willis, who I work with on both my other films, and who's an extraordinary composer, and Charlie XCX, who I still can't quite believe, agreed to write not just a song but a whole album for this film.
What did you ask her for, or what did you?
Well, I sort of didn't know. I mean, it sounds really, but basically, I knew that I wanted, like the film in general, I wanted to have its own feel, its own sort of thing, I suppose. And so I knew it had to be score, but it had to also not just be score.
Yeah.
And so I sent Charlie the script and said, if you just have, I don't even know what I'm asking, but if you just have an emotional response to this, will you call me and we can talk about it? And she, even though she was like in the middle of the Brat tour and the most busy person in the entire world, she read it like immediately, like that second, and she called me. And she said, what do you want? And I said, well, I think maybe just a song would be amazing. And she said, how about an album? And I was like, yeah, cool, fine, whatever, Charlie. It's fine. And I say this and I sound so dorky, but it is my favourite album I've ever heard in my life. And my 14-year-old self and my 20-year-old self and my now old crone self, it just is exactly this film. It's exactly the thing. And that's what happens, and that's the joy when you find people that you kind of have this connection with, and an emotional connection with.
Totally.
She just got it. And so, then she started sending music over, and then we would sort of try it, and then there was very little, honestly, very little like noting even required. Sometimes I might be like, oh, we need something for this hanging scene, or, maybe need something that's sort of more, kind of like slightly darker. And she'd be like, yeah, great. And then she'd just send over a masterpiece like 5 minutes later. Because she's just like, she got it. She got your words. She's got deep roots. And that's why I think she's kind of a generational genius, because she knows what we want.
Mm-hmm.
I think great artists sense things. They sense before you know what you want, and they give it to you. And that's what I felt like she did that. And then, so for a lot of it was, then her music and Anthony's music, how we threaded that all together. And Anthony, he always comes over during the edit, and we work together for weeks. And, just, it's so important, music.
But it's lovely to think that she has, her jumping off point is reading your script. It's her reaction to that. That's where that music's come from your interpretation of this book that meant something to you, that you've, made your version of it, that she's there. And it's this beautiful passing of creativity or inspiration.
It's a very nice thing, and I think that's kind of what Emily Bronte's words do, is they sort of connect witches. They have this like other realm type. They live in a sort of spooky place.
Yeah.
And I think they attract sort of those of us who like spooky things, I guess.
I think it's that idea, like I said to you earlier, that it's not often you come out the cinema and you have a feeling from a film, and you are kind of something's unlocked, something, you start questioning your own responses to things as well. And when you don't even realise when you're watching the film kind of what you're going through, because you're so invested in it, and you're so invested in these characters and this relationship, however you want to describe it, because it can be described so many different ways. But it has this longing, it has this kind of, this titanic pull between these two people, and you feel it in the audience when you'll see, you know, when they're, you know, he's on the moors and she's, and you feel the pain of it as well. Not, you know, other filmmakers could do that, but not make you feel it whilst you're watching it, and you've done that. And that's down to you, and it's down to the performances as well. And I'd love to talk about working with Margot and Jacob and finding that relationship, both those characters individually, but also that relationship.
Well, I think the thing is that we do a lot of rehearsal, and I like to do kind of really probably unbearable for everyone, more like a theatrical kind of rehearsal space where it's sort of an empty room and everyone in the cast is there, and so we kind of workshop things together. We split people off in groups. We try scenes in lots of different ways, and that tends to sort of unlock lots of interesting things. And that's usually when I do a rewrite after I've sort of seen everyone do that work. And I think what that really does is it gives everyone like permission to like invest in their characters and kind of explore things. And Margot and Jacob, I'm lucky that I've worked with them both before. Yeah. And what I really love about them is they're all in. They're just all in, both of them. It's kind of like there's nothing. The brakes aren't on, and that's how I love to make things. You know, not that people aren't safe. That's really important. But emotionally, the brakes have to be off. There has to be no shame or embarrassment, no coyness. That's hard. Like, you know, a lot of an actor's job is just putting away the stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, the amount of stuff, those two in particular, the amount of scrutiny, you know, is very, I mean, as a bystander, it's extremely, it's sort of, it's unbelievable amount of pressure. And so to be able to be those two people and to be able to just be those characters, be in the room, work with everyone else, because, you know, it's not just those two, it's Edgar and Kathy is really important. Isabella and Heathcliff's really important. They're both their relationship to their father. That's how it works, I think. And they're just watching them every day was just like a pleasure, and they were a pleasure to work with.
I hear you built a shrine for each of them.
So what we did on Saltburn, because again, I am a director, but mostly I'm a kind of Butlin's redcoat. Like, I feel like a lot of my job is making sure that everyone feels like happy.
That's a nice time.
Which sounds kind of cheesy and unbearable, and it is. But it is really important to me, and it's really important because I've been an actor, and I've been in my trailer on the first day, and I felt so frightened and like so queasy and so alone. And so what we did on Saltburn was we made it 2006. So it was lava lamps, we had Nuts magazine, everyone had their own scent, so they had like Gucci Envy and like I think Poison for Rosamund Pike, which she hated, and she was like, it's fine for the character, I'll do it. And I was like, and I would just obviously, like Rosamund, I would do anything for her, so I was just like devastated, obviously. But, you know, so it's just like that, and making sure everyone eats together, all that kind of stuff. And it's just to make people know that, like, I know, you know, before the read-throughs, I have a playlist of like Celine Dion, so that you're not walking into a like silent room full of executives who are hoping to fire you and put their sexy girlfriend in instead. You know, not that anyone that I work with would ever do for the people here. But you know, it's just like that kind of stuff. And so with this, I was like, well, what do I do with Margot and Jacob, who like are you know, it's like a big, scary, vast job, even for, you know, those two. So I was like, I know, I'm going to go through the internet, I'm going to find their best photos, their best worst photos, and then I'm going to make shrines in their bedrooms for each other. So when Jacob went into his room, he had like an insane shrine to not just Kathy, but Margot Robbie. And then she had the same thing, and both of them for ages thought that the other one had done it, which was really funny. But but again, just going through those photos, there's nothing more humanizing than somebody's first press photos from like 2010. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and it's all that kind of stuff. It's like kind of slightly taking the piss.
Getting those barriers to break down, isn't it? Yeah.
It's just like, and it's fun and it's silly. And again, I'm sure one day I'll work with someone, or maybe people just behind my back absolutely hate it and just bear it with grace. But like, and it probably won't be something for everyone, but I do think it's, for me, it makes the day more pleasurable.
When you're talking about the kind of scrutiny that they're under in kind of real life, you must have felt that when you went out on location, in contrast to having this kind of lovely sort of, enclosed set and private and being able to, you know what I mean? But that must have felt, did it feel different going out?
Well, it's funny actually, because I think the thing that I hadn't really appreciated is you don't know. So you don't know that people, that's kind of in many ways the spookiest thing.
Yeah.
Is suddenly photos appear and you didn't know, you thought you were alone, which is quite spooky.
Weird.
Yeah. But the thing is they're both extremely cool. And they understand and they're professionals and they can, it's more just, it's remarkable to me that you can also be so good at sort of shaking yourself off and becoming someone else,
One of the many things I love about their performances is this, the relationship, the arc of the relationship, but also the journey of each individual character. And also within that, how there's a lot of it, there's no dialogue, that it's non-verbal, and they're telling us a lot. And that's a great example of a little scene where there's a lot going on in that when no words are kind of spoken as well. Do you love those kind of moments as a director in terms of how they're kind of like, it's a different playground to when there's dialogue? And
I just love all of it. I loved all of it so much, and I think that yes, it's wonderful to be able to make things that work without any dialogue. I think me and Linus particularly are very fanatical about making sure that you can understand a scene just by looking at it. You can understand it by the blocking and the lighting and the props on the tape. It's a visual medium.
yeah.
I've heard. So she says at the BFI. So I think, so I love that. But also, some of my favourite things are like a really big, like, table scene. I love. There's a scene in this film which is one of my favourites, which is like a dinner party. I do love a kind of dreadful, I like Saltburn, obviously, the kind of shepherd's pie lunch scene, which was just like gargantuan and took us forever. But there's something about that too, which I think of as just like properly performance-led, just like letting people like go at each other's throats politely from across a table, like that does a lot for me.
The swing scene as well.
Oh, the swing scene. Oh, it's so awful. I'm so sorry. Like, no, we're like the swing scene. You
just
don't know.
You wait.
You don't know. But, you'll see, hopefully, if you want to see it after this. But like, I think, I just love all of it. I really do.
And tonally as well, it's really interesting because there's, just thinking about little moments that have really different tones to them as well. And like, there's a scene with Alison, and she's reading a review or trying to describe what Romeo and Juliet is to Edgar.
Yes.
And it's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
I think the thing is about the Gothic is that it's really intense. And the thing about intensity is it works so well in a novel, and it's quite an endurance test in a film, I think. And so I think it's difficult to make something that is Gothic with all of its huge emotion and all of its sort of pathetic fallacy and all of the things that it has, huge feelings, without it being a bit funny. You sort of have to, it's like that sort of tension and release that I think is so important when you're kind of like building a film, writing it, editing it, kind of performing, whatever it is that everyone's doing. It's like you need to you need to apply that pressure and then know when to release it. And the quickest way of doing that is, of course, you can have a kiss, which is a tension relief, but there's also a laugh or a sigh of relief. And so, and I just don't feel, I've never been a very serious person, I suppose. I don't know how to talk about things seriously, even if I feel them very deeply and seriously. Maybe that's my kind of British sort of emotional constipation, I don't know. But yeah, so it just made sense for me that it would be slightly camp, that it would be funny at times, because otherwise it really is, it's a lot of mud and a lot of looking at each other across a room.
There's a lot of like beautiful shots that are like, they take your breath away sometimes as well. And I wondered if you had like references for this in terms of, when you said about wanting to kind of do your kind of old school Hollywood studio, kind of stage, and if there were certain films that were just, reference points for you.
Totally, and I think me and Linus, like, we are obsessed. We're both obsessed. Susie's, everyone that I work with is kind of deranged in a really good way, and so we're all. But it's, it's so many things. The conversations were about, of course, Gone with the Wind and those kind of old studio epics, but it was also about Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and it was also about The Night Porter. And then we looked at lots of sort of brutalist landscapes and places where there was sort of an unusual kind of monument in the middle of nowhere, and, the insides of animals, a lot of it, or lungs and the way that they relate to trees, waxworks for skin, there's just a lot of building texture as much as we do look at other films, of course, but not much. It's much more of a kind of sensual, like every discussion that I have with every person I work with is sort of sensual or emotional, more than it is sort of reference-based.
Yeah. What were the most important themes for you from the book that you really wanted to get across in the film?
So bad at themes. Because you never know. You have to make them up afterwards. And I'll tell you what I've made up for
Go
this.
on.
I think, because really for me, it comes from, as I've said, it sort of comes out sort of sometimes when you don't want it to. So I don't really know that if I can think thematically. But for me, certainly this film was about, what happens if you deny something kind of primal, and what that does to everyone around you and to a relationship, and how that, how devastating that can be on a love affair. And, there's a lot in the book that's very sadomasochistic. It's very, so I think probably why people were so enraged by it when it came out. And they weren't it didn't get bad reviews, it got angry reviews. And that's why it's really good.
Yeah,
People
totally.
were barking furious.
Yeah.
Men were furious.
Yeah.
And so that's always quite thrilling. But, it's a sort of exercise in power.
Yeah.
And that's always something I go back to. I don't know why.
But not kind of drawn into that sort of, not revenge, but that kind of more the longing and the kind of...
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's sort of... I mean, it is a revenge book. I mean, the thing about the book is that it's sort of in two parts, and the second part is not about Cathy and Heathcliff, it's about their kind of descendants, and it's quite... It's an acquired taste. It's not the part that I always loved and responded to. And so the kind of revenge part of it was always felt like the least interesting. I think both of these characters, all of these characters can be reprehensible. They can all be kind of sort of jealous and cruel and spiteful and vain and, all the things that they are. But they have to have, you have to love them. You have to understand them. And I guess somebody pointed out to me recently that all of my films are about revenge. And I was like, never occurred to me. I must be very vengeful. But I think it's more about something that happens in your life that you fixate on. I think they're all about people who have, there's an itch that never got scratched, and they never got over it.
But I think there's such a truth in so much of the way that you talk about, like love's never always like right or healthy or goes in the way that that you plan or you expect, sort of thing as well. And there's an honesty in the way that that's depicted, I think, as well, in terms of shit happens. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes you can't control it, and sometimes you've just got to like accept it as well. And I love those kind of questions that come up in the film about the decisions that are made.
Yeah. Well, and everyone has a different, that's what's so great about making something. Everyone has a completely different personal threshold. We all have different pain tolerance, and we all like different things. So you always have to kind of like allow for that. Mm-hmm. You sort of have to use yourself as like a guide, I think. But, when it comes to love, I feel the reason that this book is a love story, and I think it is, I believe it is, not that it's like a lovely love story, or a nice love story. And I kind of feel like this is quite depressing, but love is fatal. Every one of us is going. That's the one certainty we have. Mm. So to love someone is an act of masochism. It just is. And I think that's why we respond to tragic romance, because we know that. We know that, and we deny that every day, because you have to.
Yeah. And
so I do feel very strongly that, like, we're all kind of to some degree engaged in that sort of putting our hand in the fire. And I also believe that there are things about all of us that are deeply unlovable. And the thing that makes life worth living is that somebody might know them and love you anyway. Mm. And that's what Heathcliff and Cathy are.
Did you find it emotional making the film? Because this story meant so much to you in it? Or can you sort of remove yourself a bit?
I found the like act of making it really emotional, because I found the like physical, I don't know, I just found the like physical building of the set so moving and so huge. I just couldn't believe what was happening. It was so incredible, and that I find really moving, and I find everyone's dedication and trust really moving, because I often think I don't really deserve it. Like it's a lot for people to work with you, and so I'm very grateful for that. And when it comes to the film, definitely, if I'm not feeling it, if I don't think it's sexy and I don't think it's difficult and it doesn't give me like a kind of like freak out, if I'm not viscerally reacting to it, then I haven't done it right. And I know, I just know, and it's really easy. And there are some, it's amazing. There are some scenes that you write and you're like, wow, this is a banger. And then, but then for some reason it like, you rehearse it and you're like, no, it's not working. Mm-hmm. And then and then sometimes there's something that's not working. Then you sort of find the thing and you're like, and it gives you that like stomach drop. Yeah. And that's kind of why I love working with all the actors as well, is that they're looking for that too. So when you call cut, everyone goes, ooh, there's that feeling of like, ooh, I wasn't expecting that. Yeah. Because that's kind of what life is like. Like none of us are consistent. Mm. Like we're really inconsistent characters. Like how many times in your life have you thought, I just could never believe that person would do that thing? And you're like, of course they would. Because everyone could do anything, really. Under the right circumstances. So that's where I like to be. I like everyone to kind of like, it's like playful. It's like upending. You need the table slightly to get flipped for all those Real Housewives fans.
And is there a journey then once you're in the edit as well, in terms of kind of sort of finding the film and the film talking to you? How much did it shift in terms of, the idea of you kind of going looking at a scene and going, that's brilliant, it's not working. Similarly, when you're in the edit and you're kind of trying to tell the story that, in its final form.
Totally. Like you have to kill so many darlings in the edit, and that's dreadful. And it's also the way that I like to work really is to do lots of different things, because you tend to just uncover stuff in the edit, and then what I hate is sometimes you uncover a thread and then it doesn't, and then you didn't see it on the day, and then you're not able to to kind of see it through, so you can't use it. And so therefore I like to be really quite wide in the kind of options that I have. So that means that you can always, especially when the actors are as good as they are and the camera team and, you know, everyone is as good as they are, it means you could cut 50 films, really. And it's not because it's just loads of material. I don't like shooting too much. You know, we're really strict about kind of quite minimal setups. I don't like shooting on more than one camera if I can help it. Neither does Linus, because you're always compromising, you know. And I think, so I try to be quite considered about that stuff so that we have time to really, you know, do the boring stuff first, do the audition takes first, give us the, like, good acting, and then let's do some fucking bad acting. And that's where we're all kind of having a good time, I think.
Is there is like a big fan of a DVD extra? Do we have like the equivalent of like all those like juicy extra bits that we might get at some point as well?
Do you know, oh God, it's so awful. In fact, I got asked this by Warner Brothers and I was like, I do believe, and maybe this just makes me just so annoying, if it's not in the film, it can't exist.
Okay.
I really, really think that, because otherwise it's a cheat. It's like reshoots. And I'm sorry, I know that reshoots are often important. You know, sometimes you might have to do them. I really think if you haven't got it, you haven't got it. And you have to work with the material you have. If on the day something goes wrong, you've got to use it. You've got to find a way around it. That's like part of it. I think without kind of like boundaries, firm boundaries, you just end up slightly, all of you like floating away, I think, a bit. So yeah.
No DVD extras in it. It's
I'm
fine.
sorry. I am going to be doing a director's commentary, but the problem is with that is my voice is extremely annoying.
No, it's
and
not.
Also, it just is. It's fine. It's fine. But also, I do find it quite difficult to be sort of. I find like the work itself, the thing itself, is deeply serious, but talking about it I find difficult because I am frightened of sounding pompous. And so I know that the DVD extra will be like, oh, look, this was the day that Margot ate too many crisps. You know, it's just going to be just like...
Do it as Heathcliff.
Sorry?
Do it as Heathcliff.
I love you thinking that my accent work is as good as Jacob's. Like, there's a reason I've only played one character my whole life. And it's Posh Friend. Like, I can't do an accent. Come on, please.
Oh my God, that would be amazing.
It would be a death for my career.
It's when you, sorry to talk about another little scene that you will get to when you see it, but this is an extent of how much you kind of like are in it. It's that moment where he lifts her up, and honestly, when I watched it, I went like that.
So yeah. What was really funny was when we showed it at the premiere for the first time. In that scene, Heathcliff he hooks his hands under the laces of Kathy's corset and just lifts her up with one arm to put her lips to his lips. You know, and I said to Jacob, you have to do this. And he's like, I don't know that it's physically possible. And I was like, well, you've got 2 months, and you better believe that, like, Leonardo DiCaprio would have been able to do it. So like, I was just like taunting him every day, like, don't make me ask but like, yeah, it's one of those moments where every single person watching on the day sort of went, oh, but also and then something happens afterwards as well that's sort of quite, you know, sexy. And in the screening in Los Angeles, when this happened, all of the women in the audience just went, and it was just like the most gratifying moment, because that's it. That's what you want. Like, you know, you want to just. It's got to be a good time. Even the most devastating story in the world, it's got to be a good time, doesn't it?
Well, you go from that to like heartbroken by the end of it. It's just like that. But yeah, I genuinely just. Yeah. Do you have when you think of the shoot, do you have not a favourite scene, but something that was particularly memorable from making the film?
I loved. There's a scene with. I like a big scene. Mm-hmm. There's a scene where we see, so Alison Oliver plays Isabella, who's sort of infatuated with Kathy and infatuated with Heathcliff, and just infatuated, just full stop. And because she's a Victorian lady, she basically has nothing to do. And so she makes a kind of series of like really quite psychotic and pornographic crafts, sort of inadvertently. But one of the things she makes is a kind of a doll's house, which is a perfect replica of the house that they live in. And she has Kathy and Isabella dolls. And so we had to make a scale model, a perfect scale model of the room that we were in, with all of the food exactly as we had it on the table. So, and lit in exactly the same way, so that we could do a kind of in-camera trick, which is we're in the room and then suddenly we're in the doll's house with a crossfade and you kind of don't notice. So it feels at first like a hand's coming in through the window. And that, so many people had to do not just a good job, but a perfect job to make that shot possible. And it was almost not going to be possible, and it was. And when it happened, I think we were all just so made up. We were just so thrilled. You know, it's just like that kind of thing when everyone comes together, and then there's Kathy and Isabella standing at a doll's house, and tiny Kathy and Isabella at another little doll's. You know, there are just like infinite doll's houses. It's just like, that's the kind of shit I love. You know.
Well, your choices are just pristine, and your vision is amazing for this. Thank you for sharing your Wuthering Heights with us. I'm so excited for everybody to see it. Thank you for talking about it tonight.
Thank you guys so much for coming.
Wonderful, Emerald Fennell.